Said it weren't just my imagination running away with me. Said it weren't just my imagination running away with me. Yes, of course, I'm talking about the Canon M50 that I've been loving up for the last month or so. Obviously, with the street photography thing, it is a hit. It is a super hit. And we've tried it out with doing events, although I didn't get it for events, as I've said before, just for street photography, really. But I wanted just to see if it could outdo the mighty 5D Mark II, which it actually it does. But it's not for that. So job safe. Your position is safe here, yeah, in the house of the multiple media manager. So I wanted to test it out with doing some video. And last week, if you watched the episode last week, I took this baby, my nice beloved M50, down to the forest school that my daughter goes to, and I did a little production just using this setup here, Canon M50 with 10 to 18 EFS lens with my adapter. I didn't use no microphone on top. I didn't use no lavalier, which is what I'm using now. Just the microphone in the body and just this lens on the camera, straight. I wanted to see what it could do, what the output would be like, what the sound was like. So I took it down to the forest school. It was a nice environment, and big up to the Sankofa to Nature, those who run the forest school, to Douglas and the team down there, put up with me running around with my little M50, getting little shots and little interviews, and they, everything cool. So anyway, if you look at the video from last week, you'll see that it was just a little impromptu thing that I put together. Just a little session that I put together, filming with the M50, as I said. And how did it perform? I was quite happy with it, to be honest with you. I was quite happy with it. There's a few little niggles that I could live with, but I wouldn't use this for video, because obviously I've got my 70Ds, which do an excellent job for video. But you can get away with it using this machine. Just the body alone, no microphone on top, which I was quite impressed with the audio coming straight out of this thing. A couple of times when I had it out, obviously I was holding it out like this, holding it out at arm's length with the flippy out screen, obviously so you could see yourself, which is standard if you're going to be shooting a vlog. I was standing like this with my camera in my hand. And where's the microphone? It's on, which side is it on? I don't even know where it is, but I think some of the times, the audio tone, the sound of the audio suddenly sounded different. It sounded perfect, but then just the actual timbre of the audio quality, sometimes it sounded full-bodied, then other times suddenly it sounded tinny, and it might have something to do with the way I was holding the camera. I'm not even sure where the microphone is on this, but sometimes if your hand goes in front of the microphone, it blocks some of the frequencies, and I suspect that is what's happening, because sometimes audio sounded perfect and other times it was just a little bit tinny. But I suppose if I was really shooting a video, for a client, I would use a lav mic. I wouldn't use the mic coming out of this. But if you're on holiday or something like that and you got this little camera, you can get away with some pretty good audio coming out of this. One of the downsides of shooting with this is, for some reason, there's little audio LEDs that go across that tell you if your audio is distorting. I can see it right now in the camera that I'm using. With a flip out screen, you can have it visible on a 70D made by Canon. But for some reason, you can't have it on the M50 made by Canon. after they made the 70D. So that's a feature they've taken off for some strange reason. Unless there is some way of doing it that I don't know, you can have the audio showing on the back. Let's see if we can get it up. You can have the audio showing on the back just to test to see that the audio, I don't know if you can see this. As I'm speaking, you can see the audio needles are moving. Can you see that? I don't know if you can see that. The audio needles are moving. But when you flip it over to live view, the needles disappear. What is that all about, Canon? Why would you do that? You've got it on your older machines. Why would you take it off of the newer machine? And that's kind of frustrating because you don't know whether your audio is distorting or if it's suddenly there's some noise in the background, because I wasn't monitoring it, as I said, by headphones or anything like that. Obviously, I couldn't unless I had the headphones in the shot. But you can do it on a 70D. What is that about? I don't get that. So you have to be careful with that. You have to set your audio and make sure it's okay, which you should do anyway. But that is a feature that can make you feel safe. I'm looking at this one on here and it's not going into the red, and it makes me feel calm. So that's one against the M50, kind of, because it works brilliantly other than that. Yeah, what else? I've got some notes over here. The exposure level. It was a bright sunny day. If you notice, some of the shots look slightly overexposed. It was a bright sunny day, and this thing shoots at the highest it shoots at 1/4000th of a second, and I suspect that has got something to do with it. When it went really bright, this thing struggled, and I found myself riding the exposure compensation wheel, which is right here, to try and control it. The 70D goes up to 1/8000th of a second shutter speed, so it could handle those brights a bit better. I suspect that's what it is. So again, the 70D is slightly better for video in those kind of changeable circumstances. If you're in a controlled environment, I'm sure this would be just as good. You wouldn't have to worry about that. But that was one thing that I kept noticing, the exposure, battling with it, and then it'd go really dark and I had to spin it the other way. But yeah, other than that, it was pretty good. I was shot in 1080p. I didn't go to 4K. I don't shoot 4K. I have no need for 4K. I didn't want to stress my poor iMac out with some huge files. So who needs 4K? If you need 4K, it can do 4K, but I didn't want to shoot in 4K. So 1080p looked pretty good. The images look pretty clean, apart from, as I said, riding the exposure to try and control it when the sun really blazed. I mean, it was a hot day. There was hardly any clouds in the sky, but we were shooting under a canopy of trees, so some parts were shady and some parts were bright, and when you stepped out into the bright, the camera was kind of struggling with it, I found, and I was struggling with this wheel. I kind of dealt with it, but some of the shots, when I look back, a lot of the shots, I don't think they were usable because they were overexposed because of that thing. Anyway, I only used this one lens, one body, one lens, one battery for the whole of that production. My 10 to 18 super wide, which I just love this lens. It's just amazing. You can fit so much in. It's a great storytelling lens. You can fit the environment in when you need to. You can go in close and you can flip it over to 18mm when you need to go in a bit tighter. I found it perfect, to get into those little tight spots where the children were all around a table and they were cutting the peas. This just perfect, beautiful, wonderful. So this little setup really worked. As I said, this lens is one of the lightest Canon lenses. This body is so light. I could have carried it around for days and it wouldn't have affected my back. I wouldn't have felt strain by the end of the day, which I didn't. But as I said, I only had one battery. The battery, I was shooting on and off throughout the day, so it wasn't straight 4 hours, but it lasted about 4 hours, shooting intermittently. And I got all my shots done. There was just enough juice left to take a few pictures, which I did at the end, but it did the job. If I was seriously filming for a client, I would have had 2 batteries anyway, so that wouldn't have been a problem. But you can use one battery if you're on holiday with this. One little battery, one body, one lens, very light. no microphone, fit in your bag, and you can tell a little story. So that worked pretty good, I think. This lens has got image stability on it, image stabilizer on it. Right here, you can see. It's a little switch, if I can show you that. There's a little switch there. So it is an image stabilizer lens. It was a bit jittery at times, but I could fix that in Final Cut X, which is what I was editing with. There is image stabilization on there. You can do that in software, but I just wanted to do a quick thing. So when you look at the footage, there is some, when I'm changing positions and shooting up high and shooting down low, there are some jittery moments in there, but it was completely handheld. No tripods, no gimbals, no drones or anything like that. It was just me, camera, handheld, speaking, microphone, light, normal, natural daylight, and making it work. So this is a very powerful little tool. Just this little kit here is a very powerful little tool. You know, when I looked at the footage and the production at the end of it, I was thinking years ago, that wouldn't have been possible on such a little machine. So very good. What else? The codec, this shoots MP4, whereas the 70D shoots MOVs. So when you put it into Final Cut X, it kind of struggles a bit. It takes a bit longer because it's got to unpackage or do whatever it's got to do. It's a lot quicker if you want to do, if you've got a lot of video to edit, it's a lot quicker. It'd be a lot quicker to shoot on a 70D, which shoots in MOVs, that Final Cut handles easily, as opposed to MP4s coming out of this, which are smaller files, but obviously they're compressed more. So Final Cut has to work a bit more to get them, you know, to edit them and to sync them all together and does whatever it does behind the scenes. So verdict, what would I say? Verdict. It can do everything. This machine can do everything. It can do photography, it can do videography, you can tell stories with it, you can make movies with it. Just the machine on its own, it is excellent. So I would say it's doable. Go for it. If you want a one camera solution, and we know there's no such thing as a perfect camera. There's no such thing as a perfect camera. But if you want one camera to try and do everything, a kind of all-purpose, general purpose thing, this can do it. This can be it. This little baby right here can be it. This one-stop machine. So, I don't know. I'm happy. What do you think? All I want is the perfect camera. All I want is the perfect camera. And it doesn't exist. So there you go.